Hi, I'm Mike Carberry.
And I'm Colleen Carberry.
I'm a chiropractor.
And I'm a physical therapist.
And we are the founders of Advanced Medical Integration, AMI.
How did we get started? Where did it all begin?
All right, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So we're 37 years married now.
That we are.
And our career started slightly before we got married. Mm-hmm. Your career started actually before that. It was a career change for me. I actually had my background in marketing, and that all fell apart when I met you.
I think what fell apart was getting hurt. That's what fell apart.
Actually, yes. Mm-hmm. Getting hurt, second best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Don't you want to know what the best thing is? It was meeting you. But no, the second best thing that ever happened to me was getting hurt, because actually that took me down a path where I had to solve my own health problem, and it got me involved in healthcare. And now we work together.
And we do, yeah.
We've been working for 37 years.
Let's go back. Let's go back. So this was in 1986.
We met in 86.
We met in 86, right. Yep. You got hurt in 86.
Yep.
And by 87, by September of 87, not only were we married, but our cars were completely packed up. We left all our family, all our friends, and we moved to Georgia so you could go to chiropractic school.
Yeah. Actually, we had a lot of things going on at the time.
Yeah.
My dad had died like 4 weeks before I got married.
Yep. Yeah,
And then we moved to Georgia 4 weeks after we got married.
Yeah. Because we literally just packed everything up and left and got a little tiny apartment in Georgia, and you started life, and I started working down there. We didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody, yeah.
Actually, I think it was a pretty smart thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because then we got to learn to depend upon each other.
That is very true. That is very true, yeah. So we were down there, and you went to school for 4 years.
Yep.
And while we were down there, we had Amanda. So
Yep.
our oldest now, who is 33 years old. So we had her when we were down there before you actually graduated from chiropractic school.
Yeah, I went to Life. People ask me, why'd you pick Life? And I'd like to give some philosophical answer. And really, I'm embarrassed to say I didn't think there was any other chiropractic school. I asked the guy I was going to, and I said, where do you go to learn this? He said, Marietta, Georgia. I was like, oh, okay, that sounds good to me.
And you said to me, let's go to Marietta, Georgia. I'm going back to school. And I said, okay, that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
And then we left. I know.
Well, you were a little bit more encouraging than that, because a lot of people in my life were telling me I was crazy to be quitting my job.
Yeah.
Family members, my boss was like, I remember he said to me, you're going to go to school to become a chiropractor, you're going to give up this job, what are you going to sell, Amway? Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, what's Amway? Mm-hmm. It was a derogatory comment. I guess the chiropractor in his neighborhood also sold Amway.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, when I was down in Georgia, the one thing I learned from my career was that because you were in school full-time most of the time, towards the end you were working, but full-time, and we did not want to take student loans.
Yeah.
And so the idea was for me to do work many jobs, and so I did, and which for me was phenomenal, because not only did I work my main job, but I got to try so many different things in so many different areas of my field that it was actually a ton of fun down there.
Right. You know, it's funny, when I started school, I remember they came out and said, we highly recommend you do not work while you're going to school. And then I guess apparently the government laws changed about student loans. In the second year, they said, we suggest you all get jobs. So I was a security guard.
Yeah, you were a security guard.
First, I was a security guard for a security agency, and we used to go to different places. I remember some pretty wild stories with that one. But then I got a job at the hospital.
You did,
and I think I was the only security guard in the hospital that was not a police officer.
Yeah. Well, you know, at that point we had Amanda.
Yeah.
So think about it. So we had Amanda, and I know for me, the only way, because again, we had no money. We had almost no money, right? Because we were trying to pay as much cash for school as possible.
Yep.
And so had Amanda, and in order for us to keep health benefits, I had to go back to work within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
A certain amount of hours. So we just figured it out so I could go back to work part-time, and then you took Amanda to school, and we just figured it out. We did. I just remember coming home one time, and all the windows are wide open. The music is blaring. I find you and your friend carrying Amanda around in a diaper. She's sweating to death. You guys are having the best time in the world. And I thought, what happened to motherhood? Like,
we wanted to introduce her to Santana. So.
I think so. Yeah.
So.
But either way, she survived and is great today. And then we, of course.
Now she works with us.
Now she works with us. She does. Yeah. But then it was time to leave. You graduated. And we always knew going down there that we were going to leave. It was time to leave.
You know, I actually did start to fall in love with the South when I lived down there, and I was tempted to want to stay in Georgia. But then I thought, well, no, we'll go back home to family.
Yeah. We have big families up north. Yeah, big families, yeah. So we did. We decided to, we packed up. We took, literally, again, we saved up as much money as we could and had U-Hauls. Remember U-Hauls and the cars, and we had dogs, and we had Amanda.
We had a canoe in that U-Haul.
We pushed everything into the car. I took Amanda and a dog. I'm sure you took a dog. I don't know how many dogs we had at that point, but we moved north. I remember moving into it was a new construction we were renting, and I thought, like, compared to what we were living in Georgia, because we were so poor, I was like, this is heaven. And I remember moving in, and we get all moved in, and we get all settled, and you start your first job, which is an associate, right?
Yep, and I made a whopping $25,000 a year as an associate.
Yep. But I remember sitting on the end of the bed, holding this jar of money, like change, literally, and saying, like, this is all the money we have until you get your first paycheck. Like, we literally left Georgia, spent, we had to rent the U-Haul, do everything to get up there. It was like, we have a 5-month-old baby, a jar of change, and our belongings, right? And you were working.
Well, we brought some food with us, too.
We did have a pantry of food, yes. We had enough food to let. But I remember looking at that going, like, we have no backup. Like, we have no backup on this at all. We just took that gamble and came back north. And I decided, remember, instead of taking a job in a hospital, which would only pay me so much, I decided to contract out. So I was going out, striking my own contracts to make money, because I could make way more money. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Because you were making $25,000 a year, and I said, well, I'll go out and make the money, and that's what I was doing.
I think that year you made $80,000.
I think I did, yeah, and you made $25,000 that year.
Right.
And we, you know what?
We were doing okay.
We thought we were doing okay at that point once we got going.
The job I had, with the guy I was associated with was a great guy, very full of knowledge. He was an occupational therapist plus a chiropractor. And I thought, what a great opportunity. I'm going to learn. And I got in there and I started working and I started learning. And then he injured his knee skiing. And he was out of the practice for a couple of months while he was healing up. And I was running the practice by myself. And then he came back from that and he had a heart attack and he was out of the practice for the rest of the year. And I ended up running the practice myself. So it was a baptism by fire almost.
Yeah. I remember I would go to the yogurt place. I would take Amanda there like 5 days a week. I'd go get yogurt and we'd come over because you were in the practice. You worked till 7 or 8 at night. I don't really know. I was home alone with Amanda. We had really no money to just spend. So we'd go get yogurt and we'd sit and eat yogurt with you in that little office he gave you that had no windows and nothing on the walls. And then I would take Amanda home and put her to bed. And it was just kind of like, you did it for a year to get that experience and what you needed. It
was good. It was a great experience.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was an occupational therapist, while I was there, he was putting a rehab into his office. This was like on the tail end of the Mercedes 80s, and I guess chiropractors were still getting paid for rehab.
Yeah.
And so I got to see all that, and it kind of got ingrained in me to do that.
Yeah.
So it was a good experience. I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
But then we started our own practice, and we had no money to start that.
I know. Well, we got pretty inventive because, all right, this was probably the second or third time we had no money when we made some big decision to do something. So we had no money.
Right. Mm-hmm. We bought a computer. We saved up and bought a 286 something. I forget how they used to measure
probably
the.
This deep.
Oh,
right?
The screen was that deep, and
the screen was about this big, right?
Yeah. And I remember it had a accrual accounting program on it, and I used that to negotiate buying our house, our first house.
Yeah, I remember.
Because we couldn't get a loan because we were only less than 1 year in practice.
Yep.
And
I didn't have a real job because I contracted myself out.
That's right.
So I didn't have a real job.
So we didn't have enough tax returns to get a loan. Mm-hmm. So what we did was we appealed to the people that were selling the house, and it just so happened it worked out. They decided to finance us.
Yeah.
And it worked out good.
Yeah,
and we used the same program to get financing for our practice as well because we didn't have the money for that either.
Yeah, but you didn't get a bank financing, did you?
We got creative. So I got a loan from the guy I covered the practice for. Mm-hmm. I got a loan. My brother got a loan on his house.
How much of a loan was it from him?
From who?
The guy you practiced for.
10,000.
10,000. Okay.
And then I think I got like 8,000 from my brother because he was doing an addition on his house and got extra money. We went to the bank. We were transparent about it, so they added that on. Mm-hmm. And then your mom co-signed a loan for like 25,000.
Yeah, because you couldn't get a loan because you didn't. The practice wasn't. The practice wasn't open yet, and I technically didn't have a real job because I didn't work for anybody. I worked for myself.
Right.
Yeah. So you just kind of push that money together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we had to go to, we call them Loan Shark, but we had to lease all the equipment and everything, every desk, every chair, everything. We had to lease.
Yep. Yeah.
We had a lease payment for that.
Yeah, but we had remember the practice was a vanilla box. It was an empty building.
Yeah.
So we had and I don't know, back in those days, the build out, I don't remember if it was rolled into the lease, but I know that you did a lot of work down there to keep the price down.
That's where we spent most of the money. Remember, we got my cousin,
Yep.
who was a builder, to come in, and they did the build out
from Philadelphia.
It
came in from Philadelphia.
And then I painted it myself.
Yep.
I remember being there at 2 o'clock in the morning on a ladder, painting and going,
Yep.
oh my gosh, it's 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, yeah. Because we had to use the money to do the build out at the time, get the doors open, get what little bit of marketing we could get out there. Oh, wait a second. I think our marketing was a call center. We had a call center, didn't we?
That's kind of embarrassing.
I know. Yeah, but I thought it was brilliant. You bought lists.
Yeah, I bought lists, and then I hired people to call and talk about what I was doing.
And back then, people answered the phones.
That's right.
Yep, they answered the phones, yep.
It was the only communication tool in the house.
And it was landlines.
That's right. So we would get patients to come in for a free exam.
Yeah.
Or whatever, I forget what it was, free exam or free x-ray or something.
Yeah. Yep.
I remember we were lining it up to get the first patient in, and I had to say, I'm doing the exam on the patient. I said, I'll be right back, and I'd run back to the x-ray guy. Is it ready yet? 15 more minutes. Okay. I'm going to do a couple more tests.
I'm sure when you got back to the x-ray, you're like, how do I even work this x-ray?
That's right. I never even got shown how to work, but she lived.
I know.
So,
I know.
It's funny how you survive all these
and
things.
that office was 70 feet deep, was it?
70 feet deep, 15 feet wide. I remember
so it was like
explaining it to somebody, and they go, sounds like a shoebox, or no, sounds like a mailbox.
It is. That's exactly what it was. It was, yeah. But it was perfect. It was. We had it like totally lined up. Yep. I mean, I didn't work there that first year. You were there by yourself that first year building it. Yeah, because I continued to do what I was doing, which was contract myself out to make, basically to pay the mortgage and pay everything else in our life while you got off the ground. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then as we started to grow it, I remember as we started growing, I had no management skills. You had at least some management skills, because in the hospitals you manage people.
Yeah.
But I never managed anybody before, and it was getting a little rough. It was getting rough where I had somebody answering the phones, and then I had somebody putting people on therapy because we were getting busier.
Yeah.
But I had no idea about insurance billing either. And I remember calling you up and saying, I really need help. I think we could do well in this practice, better than we're doing now, a lot better.
Yeah, with
but
my
I need help.
Yeah. I remember you were about 75 to 100 visits, and you kept hitting that ceiling before you were like, what are these people doing up there? Because you had staff moving around. So I said I'd come help for 3 months, is what I said. 3 months.
And that turned into 30 years.
30 years, I know. Just add a 0 to that 3, I know, yeah.
Yep.
But I said I'd come in for 3 months. I figured I was going to just be like answering the phones. I'm putting them on therapy. I mean, I'm a physical therapist. How hard is Hotpack and East Tim? That's what I went to school for, right? So I thought, oh, this is a piece of cake. Then I got in there, and I realized there's nobody to do the insurance billing. Like, what is a CPT code? What is an IC? I had no idea what any of these were. And not only that, but somebody to do the payroll. Like, somebody to do all of this kind of stuff. So it was way more than I thought. So when I got in there, I think the first thing that really hit me hard was I got in there, and there was a girl there, and she was working there. It was like, I don't know, she was going to be there for 2 more days. And she told me she got everything caught up and settled, and she got all the billing out. And I figured that was all the insurance billing and everything. Well, apparently what she did was, because she didn't know how to do the insurance billing, she billed the insurance and everything got denied. So she sent all the bills to the patients instead.
That's right.
So I was like sitting the first day answering the phone, everything was great. The second day, there was a few phone calls coming in, people not quite happy, and I was like, I'll look into that for you. I'm not sure. Wrote it down. Yeah, well, then by the 4th day, that screaming man came in, waving some paper at me that he was like, I don't know, something about his insurance. And I had found out just days before, or maybe a week before, that I was pregnant with our second child. So I was very nauseous while this man is screaming at me. But you did come to the desk, and you told him to back off of your pregnant wife.
I didn't hit him.
Oh, you didn't? You told him to back off from your pregnant wife.
That's right.
Yeah. But what I did realize was there's no way I can leave. Like this. Like, it's not that the place was a mess. There was no organization at all to it. It wasn't like,
you think about it, and when you were coming in there and we were trying to learn insurance was going through a huge change. Like, there was never any such thing as being in network or HMO before that.
Yes,
they had just
true.
Introduced that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what HMO was and what being in network was, and never did. I remember saying, I'm not going to work for an insurance company, so I didn't join the network.
Yeah. Which was fine. It was fine. We did.
But we didn't know how to do any of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, so I figured it out. And the only way I figured it out was, honestly, I got on the phone with the insurance companies, and I just basically said, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you tell me? And they actually were pretty nice. And so I did figure it out. And then you get those books, those ICD-9 books or whatever, and you read the diagnosis codes and that kind of stuff, because you were on travel cards at the time.
Right.
Do you remember those cards that you would document on?
Oh, my gosh.
Either way, I figured it out. I figured it out, but we had the ledgers. Remember the big ledger books that were you scheduled on these paper ledgers, and when patients paid, you wrote the amount next to it. And as we got busier and busier, you're supposed to balance that ledger book at the end of the night. I would be sitting there, literally the book was like this big, filled with names with these little numbers of how much people paid that I was supposed to put into that big computer, right?
Right.
And we would be there sometimes till 10 o'clock at night because of, it was so antiquated.
Yeah.
The whole thing was so antiquated. And the bigger we got, the worse it got working off of paper and stuff like that. But
Right.
we figured it out. Yeah.
Just like
Figured
figuring
early.
out getting how the patients come in, getting new patients come in, getting
Yeah.
them to stay for a care plan, get them to follow my advice, realizing I was the doctor in charge of their health. It's funny how you go through those learning curves. I remember the first patient that I had to treat that had a severe herniated disc. And it was a nurse, and she was in a lot of pain. And she was being very nice about it, but she wasn't getting much better. And I remember, like, if I don't get her better, she's going to end up in surgery. So I remember, like, putting her in side posture, having it so that her involved side was down, because I remember that was something I learned in school. If they have a herniated disc, keep the involved leg down. And I just wailed on her, and pop, and she got up. I was like, whoa. And then she
What'd
goes,
you say?
that feels pretty good. And I'm like, all right, I'll see you tomorrow. I came back in, like, I slept through the night last night. It was like a breakthrough.
First case.
Yeah.
First case. Yeah. That is when you're in practice. I know I heard you talking about that, which is like when you're an associate, you have somebody to ask questions of. But when you're on your own, you don't have questions.
It was like you lose sleep at night. You're like, these people are depending upon me.
Yeah.
It's like when we started growing, and then I realized we had an employee whose husband was out on workers' comp. He got injured, and he probably was never going to go back to work. Remember Sally?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I woke up one night sweating. Oh my God, Sally's whole family depends upon me for an income.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, we grew and we started adding visits. And I will say this about Amanda, our oldest, she grew up in that practice. Her friends were the patient's kids. So when
Right.
she got invited to birthday parties, I didn't have to go too far because it was the patient's kids' birthday parties, but Amanda loved it. She
Right.
loved it. We had a little kids room, remember? And even when Lauren was born, so she would watch
Yeah.
Lauren in the office and stuff like that.
They literally
So
grew up in the clinic.
those two grew up in the clinic. They absolutely did. And they would, we would work, and then we would go over to either the pizza place or whatever that other restaurant was, and then we'd game plan, remember? Because, I mean, we had the two kids and they were with us. So it wasn't like we had to go home, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And Amanda we'd lay everything on the bench in the restaurant, and Amanda would go to sleep, and Lauren was in her car seat and she'd go to sleep. And we just did it over and over.
Yeah.
Because we had no safety net. Like, we had no family member with money.
Right.
We had no SBA loan. We
Yep.
had nothing. Like, if we didn't make it, there was nothing. We couldn't go back. Going
Right.
back was worse than going forward. So we built, and then you got to about 400 visits, and it was time for an associate.
Which was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I got there pretty quickly, and I remember not only were we doing that, but like, look at the other stuff we were doing in our life at that time. We bought a 200-plus-year-old house and decided to renovate the whole thing.
Yeah.
While we were running that practice, in
Yeah.
just the first few years of practice.
Yep. Yeah.
So it was.
So we hired an associate, went to 500 visits, hired
Yep.
an associate, went to 600 or 700 visits. I don't know,
Well,
we
we
had 2 or 3
did
associates.
hire another associate in the middle there.
Yeah, we did.
He lasted 1 week.
Okay.
I remember saying to the guy, "It's a really physical job. Like, we're doing hundreds of people a day. Really, I'm a black belt karate. Okay, yeah, it's a really physical job." And then after 4 or 5 days, he's like, "I'm in so much pain. I don't think I
can't
can
do
work
it."
here anymore." I'm like, well,
That's a blip on my radar. I don't
Yeah.
remember that person.
So
But
Dave-
we then took more space to the next, like, we literally, I can't remember the years it was, but we took the next space over. So we were no longer 70 feet long and 15 feet wide. We were 70 feet long and 30 feet wide.
That's right.
And then the next space, and we were 70 feet long and 45 feet wide.
it was
And then
pretty
the next
amazing to me
space,
that
and we were-
every time we had to expand, the people next to us were either going out of business or retiring.
Yeah, we would walk. Remember, we would walk down the sidewalk. We'd always be eyeballing the business next to us when it was time. Like, they don't seem very busy in there, do they? And then we called the landlord. How much longer? How much longer? And then we break through the walls into the next space.
Now that I look back on it, we probably had 40% of that whole strip mall there.
We did, but let me tell you this. Let's make the laugh on this one. The last space we took was a restaurant, and it had a freezer, a walk-in freezer, which became your office.
That's right.
We took off the door, put
Just
a
in
regular
case
door in
there
there.
was a tornado.
But it was the one part about that was great was nobody could hear anything in there.
That's
Remember,
right.
we could have private conversations in there, and nobody could hear us in that.
And then
in that
I
walk-in
remember I gave
freezer.
up that office because we were growing so fast. I remember, like, one time my office, I had to, like, squeeze between the desk and the wall to sit down.
I remember that. Yeah, but remember that last space too had an upstairs. And
Yeah.
when you went upstairs, if you didn't duck to go through that doorway, because there should never have been an upstairs, somebody built it like that,
Right.
and we had team meeting up there.
That's right. We
Right,
put
and
that
it was
big, long
remember the
table up
steps.
there.
The steps were first of all maybe 6 inches deep and like this high, and you had to haul up those steps and not
right.
hit your head to get up there. Once you got up there, you could stand up. But we had a big table up there like this. And the whole team went up there. We had team meeting twice a day. Do you remember up there?
We hired Dave Morris, who was like 6'2", so he got all the foam.
We know he
put the
put the foam up there so he couldn't hit his head.
It wouldn't hit his head.
That's right, exactly.
That's right.
But man, we built that practice, 750 visits a week, medically integrated, 30 staff members, and we were just booming there, booming. And then of course we ran into, we're not meeting our purpose.
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing that did do, because I've had people say to me, oh, you couldn't have delivered good care in 1,000 visits a week or 750 visits a week. And I think I did, actually.
Oh, we did.
But
we delivered
what I did
care.
definitely get was when you see that many patients, and you see that many exams, and you hear that many histories, and you see that many x-rays, you learn just from the sheer numbers. Like, I got an education that, would take a couple of lifetimes for a lot of other doctors.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, but we ran into, which is like, we dominated our area. There was no question about that. Dominated our area, but we realized we were only dominating our area. We weren't causing an effect anywhere else. And, we knew people around the United States. And then we were offered an opportunity. It wasn't even offered an opportunity. There was no business there. It was like, hey, let's start a business, and then we can teach the model to other people.
Yep.
And we had the thought, for us, it was like, because we had our purpose line, and that purpose line was to help people with this type of care in the physical medicine space. And we were, like you said, in our area, we were dominating, but we're like, this would be great. Let's do that. And at that point, we had 4 kids.
Yeah.
So at that point, I think Lindsay was a year old at that point.
Let's not discount or forget the fact that, like, when we became integrated, we had our maintenance patients, but we averaged about 500 active rehab visits a week for 10 years.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, and in between there, we bought another house, remember, in Delaware?
That's right.
We bought a house on 30 acres.
Also 200 years old, even older than the first one.
Even older, and did a full renovation on that house, and then moved the kids down to that house while we had kids after kids after kids and Lindsay. But either way, when we thought we can spread this across the United States, we were so passion driven that we didn't look at the mechanics. And our feeling was, we packed up everything, had no money, and moved to Atlanta for you to go to school. We lived down there, had no money, made it with hardly any student loans, right? Packed up, moved back to Pennsylvania, no money, started a practice, was booming, right?
Right.
Sold that practice. So we're like, no, everything works out, it's fine. Well, we did learn a lesson, which is, you should probably first talk to the person to see if you want to work with them or not. Like, we didn't ask any of those questions.
Right.
We just thought the idea is great. This person says they know how to do it with us. We certainly can build practices.
We just assumed they were as purpose as we were, and they were feeding right off of every word that came out of our mouth.
Yep. So we moved. What did we do? We sold the practice.
Well, we tried to
sell
the practice.
Well, we had it sold when we left.
Yeah.
It just fell through after we left.
That's
but
right.
We sold the practice. It was supposed to close after we left. We sold that amazing house in Delaware, that 30-acre amazing house we had just renovated.
For a lot of money.
For a lot of money. We packed up our 4 girls and moved to Atlanta, this time on the right side of the tracks. The first time we lived there, we lived on the wrong side of the tracks with no money.
It wasn't the wrong side. It was the side we could afford.
Well, the house we rented, first of all, remember, was half the house had already fallen. So it was like this, the house that we rented,
and I had
right?
to get underneath there and prop it up.
And you had to prop it up, exactly. I think my mom, after Amanda was born, I know this is digressing, but when she came up after Amanda was born, I think she cried when she realized there was a baby born in this house because it was horrible. And she sat out front, and people would walk by, vagrants would walk by and open the mailbox, our mailboxes. They were opening mailboxes, ripping people's mail off when she was there. And the key of it all is, across the street, our neighbors had mattresses and furniture on their front porch.
And washing machines.
And washing machines.
On their front lawn.
On their front lawn. So just imagine that. And 13 dogs. But go back to present time. Now we're on the right side of the tracks this time.
Right.
And we bought a brand new house, and we moved our kids, and we thought, here, let's start again. We totally can do this, right?
Yep. And we're going to teach other people the magic of what we do.
Yep. And then, of course, when you finally sit down with someone and say, okay, let's build this business, and they say, let's build this, and we say, no, let's build this. Well, after about 9 months, you realize we can't build anything together because we can't even get on the same page. And then the sale of the business in Pennsylvania fell through, and we still owned a business in Pennsylvania, yet we moved everybody down and sold everything, and we were back in Atlanta.
Yep.
And we decided, okay, we always land on our feet. Let's run it from a distance. We can do this. Yep.
So we realized our systems that we had in place didn't work so good when we weren't there.
They probably work good with an owner on site because we were there, but without an owner on site, no, did not work so good.
So there I was every Monday morning for 2 years, getting on a plane at 6:30 in the morning to fly to Pennsylvania. and work up there for 4 days.
On AirTran. Was it
On
AirTran?
AirTran, that's right. The second biggest airport, their slogan was the second biggest airline in Atlanta. We try harder. And so I flew them every week, and I flew back every Thursday night. And
and I flew up once a month and took, because Lindsay was still little then, and I
Yeah.
would take her, Lindsay and Christian I would take with me, and somebody would watch Amanda and Lauren down there, and we just hunkered down and wrote systems to run that place from afar.
we were doing the E-Myth Mastery Program, and for 2 years we were doing that, and we were writing all of our systems.
Yeah.
And those systems actually were very, very good systems.
Yeah.
That could
Well, we
run
wrote-
without us being there.
Right. So we specifically wrote the systems to fit the model that we had built. Originally, we wrote systems to fit the model with a business owner there. This time, we wrote them to be able to run that type of practice, a physical medicine practice, without the owner there.
Right.
And it worked. And it worked enough that the doctor who worked for us had been trying to get a loan. When they saw enough of what was written and what was done, and that this guy was running the practice without us there, boom, we got the call.
Yeah, I remember it was odd. We were trying to get the approval from the SBA for the first buyer.
Yep.
And it was going on for months. The second one, we got the letter and said, as long as you're out in 30 days, we'll pay you this much money. I'm like, what?
He called me up. I knew we have to be out in 30 days. I was like, let's do it. Just get the picture off the wall. That's our last picture that we
That's
own,
right.
and let's just leave.
Still have that picture.
Because we'd already moved. We thought the thing was sold, So,
Yeah.
so we're out in 30 days, but then we have another problem. We have a big fat check. We're
What do we
sitting
do
in
from
Atlanta.
here?
What do we do now?
That's
right?
right.
Like we had a purpose line, and what do we do now?
But we had all those systems.
That could run without us there.
That's right.
Yep.
So that's when we decided to open up practices. And I remember we said, let's look at a map and any state but Georgia, because we don't want to be called in to treat. We don't want to be pulled into a technician role. We wanted to stay as an executive. So we looked, I remember calling Alabama, no offense to Alabama, but they never even answered their phone. It was always an answer machine.
You called the associations, chiropractic
That's right.
associations. Yep.
And then we talked to Tennessee, we talked to North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida was just so hard to get into to get a license. We just decided, well, we'll do Tennessee.
Well, that was pretty far too. Florida was pretty far.
Yeah.
But you got South Carolina, Tennessee, and
Georgia.
Tennessee at the time was super favorable to chiropractors, super favorable to the model. It had a Chattanooga was right across the line. It had a healthy, town. Chattanooga was a booming town, right? So, yeah, that was it. So
our closest clinic to our house was 120 miles away. And then we did 3 in 1 year. So our furthest clinic was 240 miles away. So then my
Yeah.
job became driving up on Tuesday and spending the first day in one clinic, the second day in a second clinic, the third day in a third clinic, and driving home Thursday night.
And then we got smart. And instead we said we need to open up a management company. We had a management company, but it was housed at our house in Atlanta. Well, that didn't make sense. So we actually opened up a management office in Tennessee across from one of the clinics, and we centralized our billing. Because what
marketing.
was happening was I was going up also and doing billing in one office. It was insanity. I'd go in one office and work with the billing girl. Okay, get it set. And I go to the other office. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm saying the same exact thing. Then I go to the third office. I'm like, I am saying the same exact thing. So I was like, this is insane. You did it with marketing. Same thing with marketing around, right? Answering the phones, the front desk, training the front desk. Finally, we said, this is crazy. So we actually had an office. Remember the call center?
Yep.
We had all those desks, and we had a whole call center going on. We had centralized billing. So I think the call center had like 5 people in it. Centralized billing had 3. We
Yeah.
had centralized marketing in there, centralized bookkeeping,
Yep.
and probably the most important was we had 2 training trainers.
Yeah.
And the trainers would go out.
Yep.
And that's when then we were able to start taking vacations again. Remember?
Yeah.
We went to our house in Florida because we had a whole management company set up in Tennessee to manage those clinics. And our thought process was, where do we go next?
I think we did 15 weeks of vacation that year.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely we spent summers
every moment the girls were off school, we were down in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was great. Well, and the beauty of it was you weren't running around Tennessee the whole time, which means you were home. So we were there for the girls.
Yeah.
Like literally we were there for the girls, right? And so, but of course we get the itch, which is how fast can we expand? If we're gonna meet our mission, we got to get into other states and expand. And that was what was on our mind.
Right.
When, of course, the personal tragedy happened with our nephew.
Right.
Right.
And
Which
where he was prescribed an opioid and then got addicted and then developed a problem with drugs because of his opioid addiction.
Yeah.
And
In and out of drug rehabs.
he was a great
could
kid,
not
totally
handle it.
worth saving, and I'm glad we did.
Yeah. Yep.
So I went up there to find him and found him, and got him in a program, and then he lived with us for a year.
Yeah, yeah, but it was a wake-up moment.
Yeah.
So when somebody else approached us and said, hey, what do you think about taking your model nationwide? You know, prior to that, we would have said, absolutely not, no way, did it, tried it, can't work, no way, no way. This time, though, with our nephew sitting top of mind, it was like, gosh, if we had something like this nationwide, this kid probably would not have happened to this kid.
That tragedy happened in 2012. We started AMI in 2013.
Correct. So we said, all right, we're willing to hear it out. This time we got smarter.
Yeah.
We actually talked a bit more, understood what was going to happen, and we opened up AMI.
Yeah.
And we've been at this for 11 years now.
Yeah.
So it's been 11 years, yeah.
A lot of practices, ran into a lot of people, a
Yeah.
lot of different viewpoints, a lot of different goals and levels of achievement. We've had some people really just do so phenomenally well, it's not even funny.
Yeah. But, during even AMI, we still had a practice. So we kept our practice. We sold 2 of the practices, kept 1 practice in Tennessee. So the whole time, our systems continued to prove out because the practice in Tennessee ran.
Yeah.
Literally ran, right? So our systems continued to prove themselves out. And we still were able to move about. We lived in Oregon for 5 years. I mean, how good is that? You know what I mean? We lived in Oregon for 5 years. We lived down in Marco Island, right, for 3 years. So during that whole run, we still kept our freedom as we moved forward and pushed our mission forward, which is probably the most important thing.
We didn't ignore the practices. We did work. I mean, we got stat meetings every morning. And
our systems worked.
Yeah, our systems worked. But we didn't have to be there, and we didn't have to, be holding everybody's hand and telling them what to do. We had systems were working where people could make decisions and run the business, and they were profitable.
Yeah.
They were really good.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and now, of course, our kids, our oldest daughter, Amanda, works for us now, which is phenomenal. Comes full circle, you know what I mean, where she was playing in the office as a kid and going to birthday parties of patients and then babysitting the littler kids there when she was there, right? And now she works for us, which is great, But that takes us now to, the future, right? Our mission and our vision have never changed.
Right.
It's to take this model of putting healthcare teams together on the ground across the United States that anybody who wakes up in pain anywhere actually has a choice now.
Yeah, it's a very basic concept. It's like do the least invasive first before you do the more invasive things.
Yeah,
We've got it backwards in this country where we're prescribing drugs that could kill people for back pain or doing surgery that has a extremely high failure rate, so much so that they actually have a diagnosis called failed back syndrome. I mean, could you imagine if they had a failed chiropractic syndrome diagnosis?
That would be called you're cut off and not being paid.
Right. So all we're doing is just trying to get this model, which works and is safe, nationwide.
Yeah.
And it would save us a lot of money as a country. It would help patients, and it would save them money.
Yeah.
But
well, I think for AMI, as we've grown, there's been a lot of integration companies that have come and gone. We've watched them come and go, And, it's 11 years later. In fact, it's September. We celebrate our 11th year anniversary. And, I look back on it and go, the reason why I feel like we're still here and we're still persevering is because our 3 rules.
The 3 rules. I 100% agree.
Which is patient outcomes first, got to be compliant, and then money. And the money always comes, but the companies that went down got that backwards.
Yeah.
They went after money for what's going to make me money, right? And if it's not quite legal, okay, fine. Well, and then if the patient gets better, well, that's a bonus.
It's interesting because my background was in business first, and although I didn't run a big business, I worked for some big companies. And then when we met Charlie Arts, our attorney in Pennsylvania, he was the one who introduced that idea. Is you want to stay out of trouble? Do good for the patient, make sure you do it in a compliant way, and then worry about your profits. And I thought, well, that's good. That's how they would look at it in a big business.
Yeah.
They don't chase down the dollar. They actually provide a service or a product that is good, that people want and desire, and they'll buy it. So they get the profits because they're good, not they get the profits and then that makes them good. It's a backwards idea that a lot of doctors had.
Yeah.
So us following those 3 rules, I think, was the secret to our success. That's why we went past a lot of other companies that were teaching this model, because we're not focusing on, well, how do you make $1 million?
Yeah. Well, I think at times because we're working with doctors, right? And sometimes there's other companies out there. Okay, that's fine. And then other companies are, you want to build your business, you want to increase, money is freedom, freedom is money. So
Right.
people want to increase their business, make more money because they want to take a vacation, they want to put their kids in private school, they want to buy a new car, they want to invest in their business. So that all of that is a great idea, right? But it's how do you get the money, and who do you listen to? What advice do you listen to get the money? And I
Right.
think in this space that we're in, sometimes the advice we gave, people didn't like the advice, which was let's stay away from that.
Right.
Let's not do that kind of thing. And other companies would say, no, it's fine. And at the time it seemed fine. And then people would go do those things, and then they would make a lot of money, and then they'd have to either give it back or they'd lose their practice. So you think long term, you and I we've been on this mission and this vision, right, since 92, right?
Right.
And so we have the long game in mind, which is our AMI clients. We need our clients to keep their practices open. If we're going to actually meet this mission and we're going to actually handle this problem on the ground, we need practices that are growing and don't get shut down.
Right.
And so sometimes our decision making is unpopular, right?
Right.
And sometimes we bring things to our clients, and the clients maybe like them or don't like them, business processes. But what AMI is doing is AMI is pushing our clients into the medical space,
Right.
because these integrated practices that have chiropractors as owners should be the standard of care
Right.
in the industry.
Somehow along the way, the chiropractic world, some of them, drew a line in the sand and said, we are not part of any of that mess over there. We take no responsibility for it. We are totally separate over here. And I can see and have understanding of that concept, but what it ended up doing was it isolated chiropractors and limited us to 10% of the population or less.
Yeah.
And I think the only way we're going to get more of the population and actually solve the problem created by whoever you want to say created it, is to actually get people well by doing non-invasive, inexpensive things first.
Yeah.
You look at the market and you go pain. Pain is the most common thing that people come into a clinic like ours for. And that market is $800 billion a year, and most of it's medication. And I would say, what was the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation of Washington State Medical School that said 60% of that money is for spinal pain, back pain, neck pain. And that's right in our wheelhouse. So it's $480 million, or 80 billion with a B, dollars. And you look at that, you go, that's a huge, huge market.
Yeah.
We're not saying we could get rid of everything else. What we're saying is if we did more of what we did, there'd be less of the expensive drugs, expensive surgery that doesn't work, causes addictions, causes failed back surgeries. We might still have to do some of those and use some of those drugs, but it's gone way out of control.
It's
like so much over there, like, oh, this is the standard of care. And so much so that the narrative of healthcare has been changed to fit that model.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the whole idea of symptoms. Oh, well, if they have no symptoms, you need to discharge. I was just at conferences all weekend for Continue Ed, and they were saying, when your patient's out of pain, you need to discharge. I'm like, not, and they did hear this. They said, unless you're measuring function. If you measure function.
Hence the world of physical therapy.
That's right. If you're measuring
what we do.
function and
Yep.
you're showing that you're improving deficits, they literally said that is the definition of medical necessity, which I've been teaching for 30 years.
So let's back up. The AMI program, now I'm just going to give a plug for our program, right?
Yeah.
The AMI program, because I'm a physical therapist and because you're a chiropractor, we have the philosophy, the chiropractic philosophy, right, of the body being able to heal itself, right? But you also have the philosophy of the physical therapist who works with the patient to increase function. Pain has nothing really to do with it at all. It's really to increase function.
Right.
But with the AMI program, here's the beauty of the program, is that it's a program that when patients enter into the office and they're processed through, right, the whole thing is geared to pick up where they're functionally deficit, and everything that is offered to the patient is geared to actually increase their function. But people talk about function. It's translated over to these people's lives.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody who chooses to walk into these offices has something happening in their life that they don't want to happen. So giving them back this function, right, is actually changing their life for them.
Did you say it's helping them regain their life?
Regain their life. That was our tagline.
Our
remember?
tagline for our clinics was regain your life.
Yeah, totally.
Because we didn't want it to be regain your health.
Yeah.
It was because we're not working on just trying to improve our health. We're trying to improve their ability to function in life.
Yep.
So regain your life.
Yeah,
Totally. Get back the thing that you've lost, whether it's going up and down steps or lifting your groceries or washing your car or playing golf or lifting your grandkids. And that's what our program is focused upon.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, interestingly enough is that, sometimes I'm a physical therapist, so I'm not on the inside group. I don't get to be on the inside group with the chiropractors. But I talk to chiropractors, and there's this a kind of funny idea of like, I don't want to integrate. You know what I mean? Like I'm a chiropractor, and I want to get chiropractic out. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to dial really fast back to us when we were in Pennsylvania, or wherever it is, Tennessee, when we surveyed patients, right? And we actually sent surveyors out, and we said to the public, what do you think about a medical doctor that works for a chiropractor?
Right.
And they were like, well, it's got to be the most loser doctor around if they're that desperate to take a job with a chiropractor.
Right. I remember
right?
some of the responses we got. Well, did he lose his license? Is he an alcoholic?
Yeah.
I remember somebody said, was he a pedophile?
Terrible. And then we waited a week, sent another one out and said, well, what do you think about a chiropractor that works for a medical doctor? And they said, well, it's got to be the best chiropractor in town if a medical doctor hires him.
That's right.
And you and I went, wait a second. The mission has been to get chiropractic out to 100% of the population. In Pennsylvania, we're seeing 750 visits a week. We thought we were king until we medically integrated. And then we were like, to people came in the door, we're like, where are you? And it was like, yeah, we don't go to chiropractors, right? So we thought we were making an impact, but only with 12% of the population. Maybe it was 10% back then. With the medical model, the amazing part about this is if you want to get chiropractic out, and you really are purposed to get chiropractic out, in the medical model, you're willing to actually, I don't like to use the word ego, but you're actually willing to say, I'm willing to step back.
Right.
And allow the medical person to be on the front to welcome 90% of the population in the door that would never come in my door anyway, and then introduce them to chiropractic care for the first time in their life. I mean, I'm a physical therapist, and I can say that is the best business model that there possibly is.
Right. The reason it's difficult for a lot of chiropractors is because chiropractors have been lone wolves since the beginning. They have nobody to depend upon, kind of like we were when we first got married. You had to learn to depend upon yourself. So when they start these practices, they're starting from nothing, and they go through what we went through, and then all of a sudden they realize, I can actually fix these people. Yeah. And then they start thinking, it has to be done my way because I've done it successfully. Mm-hmm. Well, the reason they call it practice is that's how you learn.
Yeah.
And
I was just
so I've said this recently to doctors. Oh, I talk to these people that are new, these associates coming out of school, and they don't know Jack. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't know Jack either when I came out of school. I learned it.
They learned it, yeah.
So our job is to mentor these people.
Yeah, let me tell you the story. I just got off the phone with a client, right? It's a new client. Got on the phone, chatted with him for a little bit, right? And he joined AMI for our systems, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was talking to him, and I said, it's kind of interesting because, the medical system, whether it's hospitals, if you go into 5 different hospitals, essentially they have the same systems. You go in, you go to admissions does all the intake, they tell you about your insurance, they send you over to finance gets all your insurance and collects your credit card, whatever it is, right? Then they send you over for the person to ask the questions. I mean, they all look the same, mm-hmm. right? And if you go into, I said, when we were in Pennsylvania, this is where we kind of studied this, there were big orthopedic practices that had physical therapy departments, remember x-ray departments, they owned MRIs, they had bracing departments, right? They did injections.
Right.
And when patients came in, they would process them, they would do their intake, they would get their paperwork filled out, they'd send them to finance, they'd do the intake. It was almost like a mini processing of a hospital.
Right.
And I said that you and I recognized back then in Pennsylvania, the medical system, no matter where you can go to urgent care, it's the same thing. You are processed the same way. So 90% of the population are used to a certain flow, right? And then you take chiropractors, right, who are by nature rogue, because who goes into a profession that 90% of the population doesn't want to talk to, mm-hmm. that the media wants to say bad things about, right? Who goes into that profession unless you're rogue? Right. And I said to him, you're gritty, you're rogue, which is phenomenal. So your asset, I said it's your asset, is your liability. Because you want to do it your own way. You want to put your stamp on it.
Right.
You want to process your people the way you want to do it, right? The problem is it's not scalable.
And there was a bit of an ego trip for me as well.
I could agree with that.
Yeah.
But besides that.
Sometimes I have to hit through the door sideways.
But besides that, I said, we were laughing about this. I said, so what happens is the chiropractic patients, 10% of the population, are okay going in and having a completely different experience everywhere. But 90% of the population don't want to come in and go, what is that? Like, where's the pieces of the program? Right. They don't like it. And so you and I were like, okay, we can set up where you come in and be processed consistently and make it feel like what they're used to.
Right.
And we just don't have to offer them all the drugs and surgery.
Right.
We can offer them the things that are going to get them better without drugs and surgery. And every one of them was given chiropractic care.
That's right.
well, that's the AMI systems. And so this guy said, I am buying, like, I purchased this because I've been in business 20 years and I am everything to everybody. I make all the shots, I see all the patients, I do this, I do that. And my son is graduating chiropractic school in a year. And I realize I can't leave this legacy to him because there's nothing here to leave him. It's me calling all the shots and telling everybody what to do. And that's nothing to leave. So I joined AMI because I want to get your systems in so I can bring him in. And I was like, that is the classic of I can think into the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was a really wonderful phone
I know
call.
you're talking about he's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. Yep.
We have a great future, and just say, I'll explain that triangle. We've worked a lot on the physical side, the structural side. I've always had an interest in the biochemical side or the cellular side. And we have a lot of irons in the fire with futures in working on both sides and enhancing that so we have more complete clinics.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. So where do we go from here?
Well, certainly our mission and vision has not changed in 30 years. Our mission is to transform the pain space in the United States and globally after that. That hasn't changed.
Yeah, it has not changed. You know, when I worked in sales and I was in advertising, I knew there was more to life than just selling stuff. And when I got involved in healthcare and chiropractic, I fell in love with it. And I love selling it. I love teaching it. So that has been my mission ever since, to get the world to understand what chiropractic is and what natural healthcare is.
Yeah.
Physical therapy, learned a lot about what you do and how you help people and how that helps program the brain and how what we do helps program the brain. So I really look at it from what do people need to be healthy.
Yeah.
And so there's a triangle that I've created, and you've seen me talk about this for decades.
Yeah.
So there's a structural side. And that is the musculoskeletal system and how the nervous system relates to that. That's all physical related structures. And we know that when it's not moving right, it affects the negative or the nervous system in a negative way. We're really good at that. There's a biochemical or a cellular side that I've also studied. I remember in Pennsylvania, my requirement for continuing education was 12 hours a year. And I remember one year I did 138 hours of nutrition, continuing education.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because I was so engrossed in the cellular side. And what do people need to be healthy? They need to have the right nutrition in their body, and they need to have their body working on a cellular level, which takes us into a whole lot of directions with infrared light and biomagnetism and PEMF and all these different things, and nutrition. So we're looking at a lot of different things. I think America right now is searching for answers. And the answers are coming in the form of taking care of our health, understanding that our body can heal itself if you pay attention to the structural side, the cellular side, and the spiritual side. We do some stuff with the spiritual side, but not a lot. And the spiritual side, I think the biggest thing a doctor could do is let a patient know that they have the ability to heal themselves. That's a spiritual reaction. But we do a lot structurally, and we're going to be doing more cellularly.
On the cellular. You know what I noticed is that with that triangle of yours is, which by the way, I do a better triangle than you.
But I'm good at adjusting.
The triangle is that when we handle the structural side and the chemical side or the cellular side, the health rises. And with the health rises, so does that spiritual or mental side, because we've worked in a practice long enough to see people come in really down and not well. And we've seen them like 12 weeks later like this. So there's no question that we cause an effect on that. We just don't directly treat it.
Well, you know that if you affect one corner of a triangle, if it's going to stay a true triangle, you got to affect all corners.
You raise one? You
raise one, you raise them all. You bring one down, you bring them all down. So we need to raise our triangles in healthcare. America does. I mean, with what we eat and what we're putting in our mouth and how we get exposed to the sun and gravity and all the things that go into that. Plus the biomechanical aspect of what we do and how our nervous system works with our orthopedic and our musculoskeletal system. So
that's where we're going.
And we have a lot of things, a lot of irons in the fire that we really can't share with you guys right now, but
it's exciting. The future is exciting
because of the attention we've gotten from doing what we do, which we've gotten a lot of attention. We are having people come from every angle, with some really powerful people reaching out to us saying they want to join us and work with us to help change healthcare.
There's a lot of people aligned that want to make a difference in this space. You've heard me say this for years. It's way easier to collaborate with others to actually make a difference in this world than it is to just go at it by yourself. So
Right.
I love it that people are approaching us, and I think there's going to be definitely some collaborations out there that are going to make a huge difference in the space. So,
and we've met some great people with
Yeah.
AMI, clients that have worked with us over the years, some fantastic people.
Yeah.
And we're just going to continue to do that. And
Yep.
that group is going to make a fantastic group. And we're not going to get rid of healthcare the way it is. We're just going to adjust the balance of it.
absolutely,
A
yeah.
little less drugs, a little less surgery, and a lot more of what we do.
Exactly,
And that
yeah.
would balance it out and be better for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
So
good.
anyway, look
Wonderful.
forward to the next 30 years with you
Yep. Oh, yeah, really.
and what we can
And the next
accomplish.
conversation that we have. So, well, you talk about how you met a lot of different people in different areas. Well, you can get to know us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Sure.
You and I are constantly on our YouTube channel, bringing information to our public, to anybody to hear about what's going on. So YouTube channel,
Yeah.
Instagram, Facebook, we're out there.
TikTok, we're on
Yep.
all of them.
You are on
like
TikTok.
People. We like people, and we
Yeah.
like talking to people, and we like communicating with them. So
Absolutely,
like
yeah.
and subscribe, and you'll get more of our information, and we'd love to be part of your group and have you part of our group.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to us chat. It's
Yeah.
been fun.
Yeah, it is.
I'll see you
Bye-bye.
later.